Good morning, Don Palayo here. It's Saturday, June 28th. Just waking up. I'm still a little groggy here, but I I did want to get a video out before my day got started. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of different savings vehicles. Once you have your emergency fund where you feel comfortable with it. Once you have your unsecured debt paid off, your credit cards, your lines of credit, those sorts of things. Once you have that done, then it's time to start building wealth. And probably the best place to start with building wealth are in your retirement accounts. Um, there's several different types of retirement accounts. Most of you are probably familiar with the 401k that you have with your employer. At least most employers. Not all companies offer 401ks. The business that I work for, I don't have a 401k right now. The plan that we use in my office is called a simple IRA. The simple is very similar to a 401k. It's more designed for small business. I work for a financial advisor in a wealth management firm, and we have three or four employees basically. So it's a small practice, and as part of that, we have the simple IRA plan, and it has different contribution limits than the 401k usually does. Many 401ks have higher matching. The simple, we get a 3% match. But I've had 401ks in the past where I got, my last one was 5%. Plus, they contributed an additional 2% once a year. They would dump in a 2% of my salary in there, of my base. So really, it was more like I was getting 7% a year match. The best one that I've ever found, I was working for a company where I was getting a 10% match, which that's not very common. What it was is that I was working for one company and they matched dollar for dollar up to 6%. But then you had the parent company that would put in 4% regardless of whether we were contributing or not. So they were putting in 4% of our income into the 401k, and then I was getting a 6% match. So I was getting 10% there. That was pretty sweet. But the truth is, though, it was like there were trade-offs. It's like my income wasn't quite as high. The incomes there weren't quite as high as I could make at some other places. So sometimes there's always trade-offs. Anyway, so so the 401k, if you're young, if you're just starting out and you're not real familiar with the 401k or how it works, or you're just real new to 401ks and retirement planning. The 401k, you're basically putting in a portion of your income, typically pre-tax, so you're not getting taxed on the money, typically. There are Roth 401ks. I'm not going to get too much into that, but with the Roth 401k, you pay your taxes now, but when you go to take the money out in retirement, you get tax-free withdrawals. You don't have to pay taxes when you take the money out. With these traditional 401k, you're getting tax benefits now. You're not paying taxes now, but then in the future, when you withdraw, you'll have to pay taxes at withdrawal. So typically, after you retire, you're typically in a lower tax bracket upon retirement, so you're not being taxed as much. There's a couple of schools of thought with this, which is better, traditional or Roth. I would probably tell you that the higher your income is, the better of a deal the traditional IRA is. I have run some financial planning, some scenarios with my own personal finances. And I fall into like the 22% tax bracket right now. And almost every time it seems like the Roth IRA is a better deal for me when I run it. But I would say I would say if you're higher than that, like 25% tax bracket or higher, you might be better off doing traditional contributions. So I am making pre-tax contributions in my work retirement plan in that simple IRA, but then with the other plan, with my Roth IRA, I have a Roth, and planning next year to start making full contributions to that Roth IRA, as well as making the work plan contributions too. So really trying to get geared up for retirement. 50 is approaching very quickly, and I've got some catching up to do. I was looking at my numbers, and I think I could still retire at 62. I feel like I've got a pretty good plan to do that. So we'll see. Anyway, so the traditional, once you've put money into the 401k, that's not the end of it. You have to invest the money. Your 401k typically has somewhere between 15, 20, 25 different funds, different investments for you to choose from. There will usually be a stable value fund, which is basically getting a little bit of interest on it. If you're the younger you are, the more aggressive typically you want to be. The thought on that is that you've got more time until retirement, so you can afford the market volatility. Typically, the more risk you take, the better growth you're going to have. But there are times when the market will crash, or come down strongly. You just don't want to be too exposed to the stock market, and then all of a sudden have the market crash, a year before you want to retire. That's when people were a year away from retirement back in 2006 and 7, and then all of a sudden the market started crashing in 2008. It's like that was, a lot of people had to delay retirement. They had to put off retirement a couple of years until the markets recovered. It's kind of sad for those people, but so especially the closer you get to retirement, the more conservative you need to get with your investments. I'm still probably 13 years out, so I still feel pretty comfortable being aggressive. I would say once you get to about 5 years out, you need to start backing off the throttle a little bit. Using other investments like bonds, fixed income. People think bonds are safe, but thing with bond funds is you have to worry about interest rate changes. If interest rates rise very quickly, bond prices will fall. So I would say, especially if interest rates are pretty low and you're 5 years out from retirement, the bond funds that you choose, you probably do not want to go with a long-term bond fund. You probably want to choose from the shorter bonds, short bonds, or maybe some intermediate bond exposure, short and medium-term bond exposure. Now, in the 401ks, they also usually will have what they call target date funds, and that may be the option that you want to go with, because it does kind of simplify everything for you. Some people don't want to pick and choose their individual investments, so they have what they call a target date fund. Let's say you're 25 years old and you want to retire at 65. Well, it's 2025. They'll have a target date 2065 fund. And so you'll just buy that particular fund. It's right now, the target 2065 fund is going to be very aggressive because you have 40 years until you retire. you can just keep investing in that, and as time goes on, you start getting into the 2050s. You're going to start gradually seeing it become more and more conservative, and then by the time you retire, it's going to be a fairly conservative fund. Um, so anyway, that's the way those work. I think for most young people, like a good S&P 500 fund, um, they're going to have some large cap growth. That's going to have a lot of technology in it. Maybe a little bit of international. International. I've heard throughout my career that you should have 25-30% of your portfolio in international stocks, and I just have not seen the performance out of international stocks historically. This year, some of the European markets are doing very well, but U.S. markets almost always seem to outperform the international ones. So I do have some international in my IRA right now, my personal IRA. But I don't have a ton. I've never put a lot of money into international. But some people may choose to want to do that, especially the way the U.S. is. U.S. is a little bit, things are a little dicey here, although things are not that great overseas either. I think it's more of a global, a Western thing right now where things are kind of shaky. I mean, European economies are not that strong either. I did notice that Spain's stock market, there's a ETF that tracks Spanish stocks from Spain. It's ticker EWP, and I've noticed it's up like 40% this year, which is whoa, what's going on in Spain, I really think that part of the reason the European markets are up so much this year it's an anti-Trump play. A lot of investors don't want to benefit the U.S. economy right now. They're trying to avoid buying things in the U.S. economy, so they're looking elsewhere for investments and for making their purchases. I don't think that's going to hold up long term. It's just what people are doing. Um, anyway, I in terms of so you're going to have several different investment choices. Usually with your 401k, there's someone you can talk to, an investment professional that you can talk to. I'd highly recommend you talk to them. Explain to them, kind of where you are, how you're feeling about it, your comfort level with investments. It's all going to, your comfort level is also important. You don't want to be, some people, it's like they just are not comfortable with the wild swings of the market that can happen sometimes. They want something a little more, gradual growth. And there's investment strategies to achieve that. So it just all depends on what you're comfortable with and what your goals are. So then like I said, you've got the traditional and Roth IRA outside of your work plan. Let's say that you are getting your full match at work. Now you could contribute to the 401k. If you have a 401k, I think you can contribute up to I'm not sure what the limit is this year. It changes every year. It's kind of hard to keep up with it. It's like around 20,000, I think, maybe $20,000 this year. They also have a catch up for people over age 50 where you can contribute even more. But I'd have to go back and look at what that number is. But so you can contribute more to your 401k plan, or you can contribute to your own personal, traditional, or Roth IRAs. That limit this year is, I want to say it's $7,000 for people under the age of 50, with an extra $1,000 catch up for people over age 50. So $8,000 you can put into your IRAs, your personal IRAs. So that's the thing I like about the personal IRAs is that you can better control the investment of it. If you like to place trades and are interested in doing that, and you're really into the investing, the more you're going to want to put it into those personal IRAs. If you don't really want to fool with it, then just continue, then add more to your work plan, and use some of those funds over there to invest in, like the target date fund or the S&P 500 or something like that along those lines. Um, Beyond the traditional IRA, like I said before, you're getting tax benefits now. You're not paying taxes now, but when you retire, you're going to have to take you begin making withdrawals in retirement. You're going to have to pay taxes in retirement. Also, with the traditional IRA, once you turn age 73, the government mandates that you take money out of that IRA, out of that traditional IRA. So you are required to take out a certain amount from your account each year. There's a minimum withdrawal requirement, what they call required minimum distributions, or RMDs. So every year the government tells you, okay, you have to take out at least this much from your IRA. With the Roth IRA, you don't have that. There are no minimum required distributions from the Roth. So you could feasibly just leave the money in the Roth if you don't need the money, and then allow it to grow and pass it down to your kids upon your death. And that's something that some people do. Some people want to have a mix of pre-tax and after-tax, have a mix of traditional and Roth money, so that they don't have enormous or have very large required distribution, obligations in retirement. Because sometimes those traditional IRAs, there's people out there with over $1 million in their traditional IRAs. And if you have over $1 million at age 73, you're going to have big required minimum distribution. They're going to tell you have to take out a lot of money out of that IRA. And some people don't want to do that. And so what they'll do is they'll do Roth conversions at some point. As they get closer to retirement, they'll start taking money from the traditional IRA and moving it over into the Roth. You have to pay the taxes on that conversion, but then that allows the money to grow tax-free over there in the Roth. The Roth IRA, one of the good things about the Roth too is that and I don't want to encourage this behavior, but some people, they want, I recommend people have their emergency savings, but if something happened where you begin to exhaust your emergency savings, you could actually pull your contributions out of the Roth IRA without any tax consequences. So you can remove your contributions. The traditional IRA, if you try to do that, you're typically going to have a 10% tax penalty on top of your ordinary taxes that you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay your ordinary taxes plus a 10% tax penalty if you try to withdraw from that before age 59 and a half. With the Roth, you can go back and withdraw from your contributions, but you can't touch your gains. You have to leave the gains alone for at least 5 years in the Roth. So you can take out your contributions, but just leave the gains alone. I try to avoid tapping into my retirement accounts at all because I want them to be there for me in retirement. So I did take some money out of my traditional IRA when I bought my house. They do allow you to take a $10,000 withdrawal from your traditional money for a home purchase. I did not. They don't charge you the tax penalty in that event if you're using it for a down payment on a first time home purchase. This wasn't my first house, but I hadn't owned a home for a while. I had gone through 2 divorces and things, and anyway, so this wasn't the first time I bought a house, but I hadn't owned a house. I think it's in 2 years, and so that qualified me as a first time homeowner to take a distribution from the IRA and not have to pay the 10% tax penalty. I still had to pay the ordinary income taxes, though. So, something to think about. There are other IRA accounts besides the traditional and the Roth IRA. Like I mentioned before, I have a simple IRA, which is for small businesses. There are also SEP IRAs, which are for self-employed individuals. So there's a lot of different retirement vehicles out there. Certainly, depending upon your situation, what is what you have available to you. Anyone can open their own traditional IRA. Roth IRAs, there are, if you make too much money, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. So there are limits on that. And with the traditional IRA, if you make too much, there is a threshold where if you make too much money, you lose the tax deductibility from. And if it's not tax deductible, it's kind of what's the point in putting it into a traditional IRA, because they're going to tax you later. Well, if you can track that, but it's like, yeah. So anyway, you have to make sure you keep records of all of that if you had to pay taxes. But those thresholds are usually pretty high, though. So if you're making a ton of money, you may have to be concerned about that. Anyway, so those are some of the places where you can begin building some wealth in your retirement accounts. That's where you probably want to start building once you have your emergency reserve where you feel comfortable with it being. Next video, I'm going to talk about some other options outside of your retirement accounts, and we'll get into that a little bit more on the next video. But again, I just want to just tell you that even though I work in the industry, none of this is investment advice. I'm just kind of giving you guys some general principles. Of course, I don't know any of your personal financial situations, so a lot of this stuff you really need to talk to someone. A lot of times you can go into your bank and talk to an advisor there that can give you a little bit of guidance on where to how to best approach your investment plan, because a lot of it just depends on your age, how close you are to retirement, your goals, your risk tolerance. All of that is going to play into how you bet, what you're going to do. So without knowing any of that, I can't really give advice. So I can talk about the general accounts. I can tell you a little bit about, what to look for, how to, some of the decision making that goes into picking which one. But so all I'm trying to say is this video is not investment advice. This is just me talking about the basic ropes of everything. So you guys have a great Saturday. It's going to be, it was storming last night. We had some thunderstorms pass through last night, woke me up about 1 o'clock in the morning or so. Anyway, I'm going to get going and try to get some things accomplished today. You guys have a great day.